welcome everybody to the 104th Town Hall. It's Wednesday, July 26, 2023. And for those of you that are a little bit new, let me explain the Town Hall a little bit. So the Town Hall was born out of the pandemic. And when the pandemic started, everybody just kind of dropped back. Everything shut down. We weren't sure what to do. And what I knew I could do was I had a Zoom account, and I knew that we could create a forum where people could talk about what was going on. And so it was born out of that. And we started it and we get together, and as things happened, like the new regulations, the PPP loans, all the things, the fraud that came up, they would get discussed here. And what we found was there was a tremendous opportunity to share information across credit unions. And I believe that's the credit union industry superpower, which is collaboration. And we don't take advantage of it enough. And I was just thrilled that my partner in crime, which is on the next slide, I believe, Mike from CU Broadcast, Mike Lawson, who I've known since before he had CU Broadcast. I called him and said, look, this is what I'm doing, and I could use your help. And he said, done, I'm in. And he's been in ever since. He might not be on this one today, but I think he's traveling, if I remember right. But I do see a Michael. I just don't know if it's him. We started having these discussions, and when I went to stop him, when I thought kind of the pandemic was done, I was a big sort of uproar of, hey, what are you doing? There's other things to be discussed. And so we've continued them. And as long as people will keep coming, we'll keep doing them. And we're thankful for the opportunity. The difference here, I think, between other webinars and things like that is we have discussion, but we like to encourage open talks from everybody. So today's topic is definitely going to be like that. And there's going to be a lot to discuss. So not that Mike. Yeah, he's much cooler. All right. I don't know which Michael that is, but okay. So let's move to the next slide. So as I said, my name's John Best. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Best Innovation Group. We were started in 2015. We do cool things for credit unions. We really kind of focus in on innovation. That's a big part of what we do. We're not looking to innovate and make products. We're looking to help everyone understand kind of what we like to call exponential technologies are. And so what are the exponential technologies that are going to be, suddenly included in your products, your services, those sorts of things. 5G is a good example. We also sort of tend to look at evolutionary versus revolutionary technology. An example of that would be, say, bill pay, which is very evolutionary. It's just sort of slowly been going for a lot of years, to RDC, or remote deposit capture, which is revolutionary technology. And a way I identify that is if people are willing to leave your credit union to get whatever this is, it's definitely revolutionary technology. If you remember, there was a time when you couldn't get RDC into your mobile app fast enough. So these are the sorts of things we discuss. We go over lots of very things. Sometimes we do demos. So welcome and strap in, because we're going to have a good one today. Let's go to the next slide. Is Mike here? I don't see him. For those of you who have been following us for a while, you also know that we have a podcast. It's called The Big Cast. And my co-host from day one has been Glenn Sarvati. And he has been a tremendous friend. He's a managing principal at 154 Advisors. He's probably the smartest guy I know with regard to payments. He used to work at the Fed, and he's just a really good person. And you'll hear us talk about all kinds of things. If you want to listen to our podcast, we'll make sure that someone puts a link in the chat. Most recent one was started here. A lot of times we expand on concepts from this, which was the voice. We were looking at the voice cloning and what happened with the kidnapping and whether or not we could get past that. Lou Grillo from PSU joined us, which was awesome. So Glenn, if you're here, I'm not sure he's in this week. I think he took off, but everybody's gone during the summer. Where's everybody go? Anyways, let's move on. So sponsors, obviously Best Innovation Group is, I couldn't do this without my team. And just to take a minute, we've done 104 of these, 104. And I know there are people on this call who attended like almost all of them. And if you've attended like almost all of them, you missed a few here or there, but if you, I know a lot of them, like my buddy Jim from First Teacher or Teachers out in Wyoming, he's been on a lot, but if you've attended a lot of them, go ahead and hit, let me know in the chat. But we couldn't do this without Melissa, Jackie, Madison, Elliot Cotto, my big team. And so when we say that they're really a sponsor, they're more than that. They're the ones that, like, I just get on here and yak. These guys make it happen. So just if you want to hit your clap button or something for those, some sort of reaction, just to let them know that they really work hard to make this happen, on a frequent basis. Then there's CU Broadcast. If you're not watching CU Broadcast, Mike's stuff, really the spirit of collaboration is really alive in his broadcast. It's been excellent to have him aboard on this, but I've just known him for so long. He really cares about the credit union industry, does a great job of drawing out important questions from innovators, from ambassadors, from vendors to CEOs. Doesn't matter. When you go and talk to Mike, you walk away feeling good. And if you're watching it, you also walk away feeling good and having learned something. So that's important. CUNA. I was very fortunate very early on in my career to get a position on the CUNA Tech Council, of which I think I served, 5-6 years, something like that. And really just got heavily involved in the CUNA councils and talk about a collaborative network. We're very fortunate that they're still working with us, and we've got the CUNA Ops and Tech Center coming up in Denver. Very excited about that. I know I'll be there. If you are in any discipline in the credit union space, there is a CUNA council for you. And what that means is it's a group of people that do the same thing as you do, whether it be accounting, whether it be item processing, like in operations, whether it be tech and IT, whether it be the executives or CEO council. There's something for everybody there, but more importantly, it's a collaborative network. So they're an advocate, but I love the collaboration that they foster and bring together with their big conferences and their webinars and the various things they go about. It's a good fit between the two of us, and we're very proud to have them as sponsors. And today, we're going to announce our new sponsor, which is the Williams Mills Agency, the nation's largest public relations and marketing firm serving the financial technology industry. I'm going to do a quick introduction. We have two of them with us, I believe. With an emphasis on fintech providers, the agency has established its reputation through the successful execution of media relations, marketing services, and crisis communications programs. So for more information, and there are lots of credit unions that use these guys, there are lots of services that use these guys, you can go to www.williammills.com. We've been really fortunate to have a relationship with Scott, who is here. Let's go to the next slide. So Scott Mills, the principal president. And then is Amber here? Amber, are you here?
Hey guys.
She is.
Yeah, so I thought I'd give you guys just a few minutes before we get started to just talk for a bit and introduce yourself to our group.
Amber?
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're really excited about our new partnership and have obviously followed Big for years, as well as been involved in the podcast and Bigcast, and always encourage clients and credit unions to take advantage of the great content y'all are putting out. So as John said, we're a PR and digital marketing firm based in Atlanta, and just really dive deep into the fintech and credit union industry and enjoy helping all those involved with their communication strategies. I'm Amber Bush, a group director. I have a team at the agency and am in St. John's, Florida. So very glad to be here and be part of the discussion.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us, and I wholeheartedly support the collaboration and for credit unions is the superpower. And I've talked about this forum with a number of people over the last year, because I can't think of any other forum that is like this, that is really as open, encourages discussion, and not overtly salesy in any way. And also wanted to say hello to Derek Howard, who's also with our team. John, you might enjoy this. We get transcripts of voicemails left for us, and Derek got a really clever one just this afternoon. Derek, you want to tell them how that one started?
Yeah, I will say it made me want to read the voicemail really quick. You know how you'll get the little transcription there, and apparently I figured out that my name with a British accent spoken through Zoom's transcription sounds like For Direct Cowards. And so I will say the headline of the voicemail grabbed me, and I was very interested to hear what they had to say.
Yeah, so was it for as in this message is
Four,
for
yeah.
direct cowards, or was it there are 4 direct cowards that you have a relationship with? Here are the 4. You know, it could go either way with that.
4, yeah, as the spelling, it was 4 as in the preposition. So it literally was just started out 4 direct cowards, period.
And you thought, how
Well,
did I get on this mailing list? What did I do?
I was curious.
Yeah, I'd be like, I think my wife must have turned to me and she saw me with that spider. You know, that happens sometimes. Now I'm getting email, or maybe Alexa overheard, you know. and
Possible.
or something.
All good possibilities.
Yeah, I remember when we first got our transcript stuff and it didn't work very well with the Nortel solutions years ago, and then it would tend to say some hilarious things. Should start a site where we just post those. Well, welcome. We're glad to have you. And yeah, let's get to it. So we've got a really important discussion, one that I think everybody's wrestling with right now for today. So let's move on to the next slide. Real quick, the Innovation Club, for those of you that haven't heard of it, I talk about it all the time. You can go to our website, big-fintech.com. Let's move on to the next slide here. This is, I think, the important one, actually beyond that. So one of the things, this is going to kind of kick off our discussion today. So ChatGPT has just jumped in and sort of suddenly made a big change for everyone. It's become a tool that a lot of folks use every day. So one of the things I like to do in these calls is just do some sort of polling, sort of. So if you use ChatGPT, you know, let's call it every day, go ahead and, or, you know, just put in how often you use it, maybe the number of times you use it a week, you know, just go ahead and put it in your chat and just to see what we come back with. Every day, Elliot, okay, Melissa. So, you know, 2-3 times a week or whatever. So what we're finding is that there's lots of interesting use cases coming about. And I don't think they're sort of proliferating. Like, I think someone over here is figuring out, hey, we could use it for, say, job descriptions. And someone over here is figuring out, hey, we could use it for, you know, doing summaries of mortgage documents or doing summaries of documents or something. And as always, what happens is it takes a while through conferences and things like that for this stuff to proliferate, where someone will be sitting around one of these lunch tables and they'll go, oh man, you know, the topic will come up and someone will go, oh, I use it for this, and someone else will use it for that. And it just takes time for everybody to figure it out. We thought that it might be a good initiative to try to collect all the things that folks are using it for and try to put that together in a report, which we'll be working with Scott and the William Mills Agency. And the idea is that if you figured out something that you use it for that's helpful, anything, or even if you don't like it, go ahead, and it's just an email form. All you got to do is just give us a little bit of information. We're not asking for a ton, and fill it out. And if you do fill it out, you'll get the report ahead of time. It's going to be free anyways, but we'll give it to you early, depending on, you know, where we go. Well, not depending on, you'll definitely, you know, get a copy of it. But the idea is to try to do some sort of summary work on this and to understand what people are using it for. Because the great debate, I believe, that's coming around is to ChatGPT or not to ChatGPT. And so if you're a CEO, and I see several, I see Andy's on here. Hi, Andy, how are you? And I'm sure you saw the topic and said, yeah, I want to attend that, because I know they're wrestling with this right now. But a lot of Canadians are wrestling with, okay, this thing seems to really help our employees move along, but we're afraid of it. We've heard things that are not good. We don't know what employees are putting into it. We don't know how it's working. We don't know what, if employees do put stuff into it, does ChatGPT use that? How does this all play? And so the discussion I wanted to have today is to really understand kind of what's floating around out there. You know, whether or not credit unions are just sort of blocking it altogether, or have they just said, well, we're going to block it, but some people can have access to it. We blocked it, but if you can give us a good reason. And it's interesting because the way this is playing out from my perspective, having just a little my background, I joined the credit union as an employee in 1996, early 1996. And at that point, the internet really hadn't become something that was a business application yet. Neither had email, and so I got to sort of take that ride with a large organization, that large organization being Suncoast out of Florida, a very big credit union. At the time, I didn't realize how big they were, but even in 96, I think we were above, we were somewhere in the $5 billion or so. So this credit union, we took this ride through the internet to begin with, and then email, and then office. And the ride always went something like this. Well, the we don't know much about it, seems dangerous, hackers, blah, blah, blah. Or we're worried it'll hit productivity. And funny enough, voicemail did the same thing at this organization. So anytime we got these new technologies, we would go about it this way. We're banning it all together, right? In case of voicemail, it wasn't something that you could go get anyways, but we're banning it all together. And then slowly but surely, people would make a case for needing it. In the case of the internet, hey, I need it because turns out there's at the time you were seeing a lot of government agencies put things online that were valuable, say for property taxes, things like that. And so one by one, painfully, people would request access and then be approved that access, and IT would be dispatched to go and give that access. This happened with the internet. It happened with email. With voicemail, it was slowly turned on because the worry there is employees would stop answering the phone. That was the concern. So I've seen this play out before, but the question is that the right way to handle this? So in order to give us a little background before we get too much in discussion, there's a couple things that I thought I'd share that I think would be useful just to know. So first of all, we had Joey Rudisell on some time back from New Willamette Credit Union, and Joey's really been pushing in the AI area, and Joey's always been a leader wherever he is. And one of the things he described was that they were able to work with the OpenAI, which is the company that hosts ChatGPT, and get their privacy policy. And in their privacy policy, it basically states that, hey, we're not going to take the data that you plug into the ChatGPT website, and we're not going to use it, and we're not going to do different things with it. We're not going to use it to train the next AI. We're not going to sell that information, and so forth and so on. Okay, well, that was one thing. However, there have been reports recently as last week of one, OpenAI was breached. So that was an issue. OpenAI was breached, and a lot of us who pay for the OpenAI service, our credentials and whatnot were exposed. So they got hacked, apparently. And this happens all the time for those of us in the industry. We know because we get the CAMS alerts, right? So we're aware when these credit cards, hacks get hit. Well, OpenAI was one of them. The second thing is FTC is, and I'm going to bring up this so you can see it, or actually maybe I can, I'll just go ahead and bring it. The FTC has now gotten involved, the Federal Trade Commission, which is an interesting choice to go ahead and they are investigating OpenAI, and that was part of it was over the data leak, but also over the inaccuracies of what it's been giving out. And I thought that was interesting as well, because the way that wound up was that they're basically saying that they're being investigated for the idea that it's giving erroneous information. And one of the things that I thought was quite funny was not funny, but the one where the lawyer who was representing a client who got hit by a drink cart in the plane. You ever been in a plane, you fall asleep and they're running that drink cart down the table and you get whacked? Like, I've been hit by those so many times I don't even notice it anymore, especially on the aisle. Obviously, if they're hitting you and you're in the window, something's really going wrong. Then you probably could sue them. But so this guy had a case against a particular airline, and his lawyer decided to use ChatGPT to find precedent to keep the case going. Well, ChatGPT obliged and gave him plenty of precedents, just none of them were real, which wasn't super helpful. So that was another issue. So for those of you who haven't seen, they're being investigated, as I said, by the FTC for potential harm to consumers. Okay, well, I mean, if you have a product that lies, but it lies in such a way that it seems very convincing, it does seem like, that could be an issue for overall the public at large. So that was another thing that came up. So these are kind of things just to consider. So the idea is this: what should be the credit union policy with regard to these sites? Now, keep in mind, there's not just this site. So I was fortunate enough, Australia engaged with us with respect to our survey. And Australia, I hope you don't mind me talking about this. This is kind of our open forum, but you said that you prefer Bard over Bard being the ChatGPT, basically Google's version of AI, which, by the way, they released the original Transformer service. So Google itself is definitely, one of the originators of this Transformer large language model technology that's giving us this big boost. And so, Australia, you had mentioned, do you mind just sharing why you chose Bard over, say, ChatGPT or Bing or any of the other platforms, if you don't mind? If you
Yeah, I mean, sure. I don't think a whole lot of thought went into it other than my gut. And because OpenAI and ChatGPT essentially was such a new entrant into the marketplace, I just wasn't personally comfortable, and certainly not in the business context or at my credit union. I just did not have that level of comfort that there was enough time to know how data would be treated and secured and that sort of thing. But at least with respect to Google, there have been more, I guess, challenges, or there's more precedent from Google's standpoint on how to secure data. On a personal level, I've got pretty much every Google smart device that there is. So I just had a personal comfort level with Google, and it's had more of a tried and true tested strategy around security. And so that was as simple as that. So it's really nothing against ChatGPT, but I just had a personal sense that Google may have had a bit more robustness and thought behind how to protect and secure data.
I totally see your point. It's kind of like nobody ever got fired for buying IBM, right? That used to be the old saying that we had in the industry. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your credit union, and also whether or not, whether or not you've established any policies with regard to your staff, and maybe a little about yourself, if you don't mind? It's an open forum, so it's always fun. There are other CEOs here as well.
Yeah, so I'm the president and CEO at CDC Federal Credit Union, and we serve primarily the Centers for Disease Control employees and contractors. We were founded in 1949. We still primarily serve Centers for Disease Control employees. We also do still have an underserved charter, so we were able to expand into several other counties in Metro Atlanta. We serve about 21,000 members today. I've got a fairly small group. We're just over 400 million in assets, but I've got a small number of employees. We're less than 44 employees today. And we do not have any formal policy around the usage of AI tools inside of our credit union. And so I have kind of dipped my toe into the waters and have found personal business uses for Bard. Some of the correspondence that I write, like the introduction to the employee newsletter every month, I'll have an idea and I'll ask Bard to create the outline for the topic that I'm going to discuss. And then, of course, I'll go through and edit and make adjustments to it. But it's a great starting point for things like that. I can imagine at some point that any written correspondence that goes to our membership should be somehow could be automated through some type of AI tool. Because, let's face it, we hire people who we think are great at everything, but perhaps written communication is not their strongest suit. And so instead of correspondence going out that contains errors, I could see AI certainly being useful in that context. So those are just some of the basic ideas that come to mind. From a member service standpoint, I do have a contact center with agents in the call center, and I don't know about the rest of you on the call, but if you try to hire people and retain them in those types of jobs in this environment, it's pretty difficult to do that. Most people just don't want to stay in that sort of workplace. They'd rather find a gig and maybe become a YouTube influencer or something. I don't know. But,
Wait,
So-
that's
so
what I'm
I-
trying to do.
yeah, aren't we all, right? But I think AI technology. So I'm interested in looking at how we could augment the human capital that we've got with some artificial intelligence in that sense too. So those are just some of the basic ways that I'm thinking about AI and a little bit about my credit union.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So before I move on, I just have to ask, during the pandemic, was your credit union like everybody just wore like 10 masks? They had to cut holes in the eyes for them, and like, because you guys were so close, you were probably getting like, I gotta imagine like all the CDC workers. I think it would have been like extra pressure for you for sure.
Yeah, it was intense. I mean, I won't say that we got any extra protection that we got basic information that the rest of society got from the CDC, but it certainly was a tense moment, and we took all the precautions that we could to serve members, because they, our members still needed financial services,
Sure.
even though they're
Yeah.
public health workers. So yeah, it was an interesting time. I'm glad most of that is behind us for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you bring up some great points, and correspondence being probably one of the most important ones that we hear a lot from. So, for example, one of the things that Microsoft has been pushing hard is their Copilot platform, and this is where you start to split hairs. And I'm glad you brought this up, Australia, because what's the difference between using Bard like you are, where you're saying, hey, and you're having this conversation with the tool, hi, I'm writing my employee newsletter. This is my idea. Can you give me, a good beginning end structure for that, which is wonderful for, right? And so that's typing into this website. But then you think about Copilot, which right now they're piloting it. Copilot is going to be a button on your Microsoft Outlook, or inside of an Excel product, or inside of PowerPoint, where you're just going to click a button and it's going to rewrite that text for you, or it's going to do that. And really, there isn't a huge difference between those two things. It just is a matter of sort of mechanics, in the sense of, one, you're physically going to a website, you're interacting, you're cutting, you're pasting, you're doing there. And Microsoft aims to take that out of it. And so does Google. Google is going to implement Bard into Gmail, into Google Docs, into Slides, into their Microsoft suite of products. And so I think that coming up with this guidance and the policies, just like the internet, the sooner we do it and the sooner we figure it out, to your point, is going to it's going to remove some of the ambiguity for the employees regarding this, because they don't know what to do. They know that they can be faster, and sometimes they know they could even be better, and sometimes, but they also don't know if they can do it. They're probably unsure. They're probably a little afraid. So yeah, there's a huge opportunity here, but it really is on us and the leadership to give them the guidance that they need so that we can tell them how to use the tool. It's like discovering fire. This is what I've been talking about. I call it digital fire, right? And the first thing we probably had to learn about fire was, don't start it way deep in the cave without some way for the smoke to get out, right? That was probably the first lesson. Hey, they started one of those fires, and yeah, none of the family came out of the cave after that, I think we're going to have to figure that out, but not harsh lessons. And so I think there's a tremendous opportunity here for that. The reason I bring it to the town hall is that I think it's a multi-pronged sort of thing. So you've got the ethics of it, right? So we got to be careful. And one of the things I posted on my LinkedIn just recently was I was able to procure some bias out of, I was able to show a very, very distinct version of bias. I don't know if Melissa, maybe you can find that slide from the IC and bring it up for me. But understanding that the possibility of bias is going to be really important. understanding the privacy with regard to data. That's going to be a really important piece, and it's no different than, cutting and pasting stuff into a Google spreadsheet that's not separate or hosted or something you have, the information in that you can push back and see. So this tool is really, really valuable, but how are we going to govern it? So with that in mind, I just wanted to open up the floor here to find out if anybody, I know Joey's been, I don't think Joey's on the call, but I know Joey was one of the folks that was really looking to other organizations. By the way, I have an article coming out about this soon that I've been putting together information. I'll share some of that today. But has anybody else actually put a policy in place? So if you want to speak up, hey, we even if it's just we said no for right now while we figure it out, whatever it is, if somebody wants to unpop and give me some detail. I was thinking about Andy Kempf, if he's willing. Yep, there he goes. I saw him.
Yeah, so let me get a video on here.
Oh, there you are.
We actually just by literally today we're finishing up a policy, and it goes a lot along with what Australia was saying, close to it, but acceptable use is that we can use it, but no forefront messaging, no forefront data input, no uploading of any information whatsoever is to go in there. We're evaluating whether we can use questions on it, because we're still not fully cognizant on if you ask a question, does that get uploaded into the system for learning or not? So can it lead into somebody learning what Forefront is asking about? That may end up
compromising
way potential potential corporate initiatives that we may have. And so we're evaluating that as well. We're looking at a DLP type thing for limiting uploading, but we need to have the download. We need to be able to use it because we have routinely, many of us around here that play with it have discovered that what would take us an hour and a half to write, we can get the guts of the project, the guts of what we want to put together done in about 3 seconds, and then finish the rest of it all in 15 minutes and be done, and off we go. So it's something that we're playing with, but it's something that we definitely put a policy in place that it'll be approved by the board next month, but a policy that we put in place that people cannot upload anything.
So Andy, will it be that certain people will have will there be various levels of of rules for each one? Is there a distinction between, say, what I call knowledge workers, which are the folks who are more back office that might be doing a project, as opposed to, say, a teller or a call center representative or a member service representative in a branch who, while they are interacting with the membership, they are they don't really have this project sort of mindset or have these sorts of tasks that would benefit from the use?
We're in the process of figuring that out. We're not limiting it at this point, but we can also tell just by monitoring website usage what we have. I don't know, 8 people out of 250 that are actually using it, so we haven't worried about it too much at this point in time. But it's something that we will continue to evaluate on the policy purpose. And for anybody that wants to get a decent policy, just use ChatGPT and put a ChatGPT policy limiting upload, and a wonderful policy pops out from it.
It does. Yeah, there is a really good policy in there.
I think another thing to consider when you're thinking about using AI in this way is the training people on prompt engineering. Now, that's going to be a big skill that we got to train people on, to not ask ChatGPT for an opinion. And that's where things usually go south. When you start asking for an opinion, it will always give you an answer. And so training your staff on how to use the technology, I think, is an important consideration as well.
That's a good point.
Well, one of the other things too that, and again, sometimes I'm not helping here. I'm just bringing up stuff. I'm throwing things in the mix. But one of the things that I wrote about in my upcoming article, which is going to be with Filene, is transparency. So, and just to give you some background, so up till recently, there has been OpenAI, an attempt to make things easier particularly for the universities. And if you remember, universities have had a huge struggle with this, term papers, the like. And so they built what was called a ChatGPT detector. The challenge is, and this is to Elliot's point, is it worked well for a while, until the students started figuring out how to use the prompts to get more detailed things, and Chat GPT-4 came out. And now that they actually just pulled back those Chat GPT detectors. And I was talking to a friend. I used to be a university teacher. I used to teach at Hillsborough Community College when I was younger. As a nighttime guy, I taught WordPerfect and Corel Draw. If you're really old, you'll remember these. I actually taught VisiCalc and a lot of other stuff too. C+, not even C++, because we didn't have the extra plus back then. Our computers couldn't handle one more plus. It was just too much. But one of the challenges, I think, for the folks that are writing these at that university level or trying to deal with it, is to come up with a detector for that. I worry that one, the prompting will get better, then the transparency of it. So I'm going to throw this at I don't know, I'm going to throw it at somebody here. Wow, I see Andy Tripp is on here. Wow, I haven't talked to Andy in a long time. Got all the Andys today. Or Darren, I see him here. So the question is this: I believe that we probably should look at transparency, but what that would mean is if we use the AI to freshen, say, a correspondence to a member, or it was generated by that, and I don't know if we differentiate between those, but should we tell the membership? Should it say at the bottom, this text was, you know how like you get text from people that say somebody figured out the whole footer from the iPhone, and it used to be at the, you got this from my handy iPhone, or this was sent from my Samsung, whatever. Should there be something at the bottom, or is there a level of transparency? Because the worry is that when this thing sounds so human and is capable of producing the responses it does it and then someone finds out they've been interacting either indirectly or directly with it, do they feel tricked if there wasn't some transparency with it? So let me see who wants to. $100 says there'll be a job title of prompt engineer for credit unions. I would agree. Chris, speaking of that, Odie, what do you think, Mr. Board Member? And you can tell me what South Bay's doing.
Oh, it's hey John, how are you?
Yeah, that's what you get for betting people $100, buddy.
Yeah, at South Bay, we basically said you can't send stuff out to members. That's
Introduce yourself. Introduce yourself so they know.
Oh yeah, sorry. Hey, I'm Chris Odie. I founded a company called CU 2.0. We find fintech solutions and we bring them to credit unions. And then I'm also the chairman of the board of South Bay Credit Union on the mean streets of Redondo Beach, California. And we're a smaller credit union. Yeah, Australia, we're like smaller than you. We're 150 million and 9,000 members with 25 employees. So I get the problems with being a smaller credit union. We just put out a policy. Well, we're going to talk about it tomorrow. Friday? Is tomorrow Friday? Tomorrow's Thursday. We're going to talk about
Tomorrow's
Friday.
Thursday, Mr. Odie.
About, and my pitch to the rest of the board is going to be, hey, we should just have a policy that says, hey, you can't put stuff out to members that's created by ChatGPT. You just can't, because you can't trust it yet. And it's not that I don't trust it. I don't trust the people asking it the question. I don't trust the prompt engineers asking the right questions to create an email or create a piece of content. So that's what we're going to do. We haven't formalized anything yet. We're just now talking about it. This will be our first board meeting talking about it. And to be honest with you, I was waiting for the staff to do it. None of my staff's here, so I can say this. I was waiting for the staff to come to me and say, hey, here's our policy we're thinking about implementing, but they didn't. And given, what I do for a living on a day-to-day basis, I'm kind of right on top of it. So I'm going to bring it up and be proactive about it, even though we're a year late. But I guarantee you, I was joking when I said, $100 says there'll be a job title of prompt engineer. I'm not actually joking, right? There will be by the end of the year, no doubt about it. And I can see it right now with this company Senso we're spinning up in the CU pilot product, looking for prompt engineers, and the consortium we've spun up. We get like 100 people show up on a Friday webinar to talk about ChatGPT, right? Like that's a pretty good turnout. All you have to do is put ChatGPT in the title. It's like 1996 all over again. Put internet in the title and everyone's going to show up. Right? So it happened. Yeah. So it is growing and growing rapidly. And I think I think you were 100% right, John. It's like the infancy of the internet, right? When people were like, this is stupid. No one's going to use this. Okay. And you just move on to who's next, because don't waste time with people that don't believe it's It's not going to be like fully adopted, like remote deposit capture or mobile banking. It will be fully adopted. It's just a matter of the winners and losers
So-
being recognized.
I have a fear, Chris. And I'm going to take us back to 1996, around that time. As you said, 1996, and you call me older than electricity. But here's my fear. So you remember when e-commerce really hit the internet, and one of the things that happened was credit cards became, the form of payment over the internet. And it really evolved from the original television. Remember, you'd be watching TV, you could make a payment now, you just had to call them and give them your number, but now you were typing it into a computer. So what's the diff, right? But it was interesting because fraud began to happen. And the credit unions took the approach of, hey, whatever we do, don't put our credit union credit cards into the internet. It's a scary place. We want you to be safe. We're your advocates. We're your protectors. Whereas Capital One, and I can see by the smile, you know where I'm going. Whereas Capital One and Discover and the other big credit card providers said, no, just put it. You're only having exposure up to $50, and even then, we'll pay the $50, whatever. And I think it's because they knew, or looking back, at least in hindsight, it would appear that they knew that this card on file thing was going to be an important concept for them, and it was going to give them a beachhead in this battle that was going to upcome, that became the e-commerce side of things. And still to this day, when I go to credit unions and I say, hey, how many cards you got? And they'll tell me, and I'll say, okay, if we ran a job today and said, okay, how many of those cards were used to buy something on Amazon? I would find it was less than, say, 5 or 6%. Yet when I do a quick straw man and say, okay, who in here has a card from their credit union? Everybody does. And I say, who in here has an Amazon account? It's almost always everyone. I've never actually been to a place where I've had any more than 1 or 2 people. And those 1 or 2 people are always a bit concerning, like you, Chris. They're the kind of guys that, live in the forest with a typewriter in a cabin. That's not good. But point is that the point is that are we putting ourselves in jeopardy? And how do we avoid that? That sort of risk-based thinking that really has hurt us long term, I think, in terms of gross product for credit unions in general, or even membership margins. I feel like we are in a very precarious point in this, where whatever steps we take, and this is where collaboration can be good and bad, right? In this case, the collaboration could lead us all to do the same thing, which is what happened with the internet and the credit cards. And as a result, pretty much all credit unions are in this predicament with regard to card on file, in terms of their penetration into these important subscription-based models that are recurring revenue, with respect to interchange, which is a good 26% of most bottom lines of credit unions. So my worry is, and I'm not saying that I'm wondering, like, for example, this would be a good report to run. Here's one I'm going to run. I want to know how many members are paying for ChatGPT. I wonder how many of our members are. So I'm going to work with my IC, and that'll be something else we'll include in the deal. So Elliot, you grab that, run a report to find out how many of the members are paying for ChatGPT or any of the services, Bard, any of the ones you can pay for. So that'd be something interesting. But Chris, you see my point, and what are your thoughts on that? Just why I got you standing up now. So
What are my thoughts on what? You just went in a massive circle there. Right?
Yeah.
My
you're
thoughts
used
are,
to that. That's nothing new.
Yeah, no, 18 years at Fiserv will do that to you. So
Exactly. No, I mean, do you
my
think
thoughts are-
that limiting the employees or limiting the staff or being, and while others maybe are being less limiting about it, does that hurt our innovation? Does that slow us down? Are we now have the goalposts been moved, like Andy was talking about, where, hey, if Andy's team can take something that was taken 3 hours or 4 hours and turn it into 15 minutes, isn't every other organization doing that as well? And is that now table stakes to compete?
Well, it gets back to what I've always said, going back to the CU Wallet days, is you have to spend some time, money, and effort on innovating and failing forward fast and developing a fail forward fast mentality, right? Like this CU Copilot thing we've got going on now with a few credit unions. If you ask Kirk, right, my partner, what it is, he'll say, oh, it's a product that enables credit unions to research quicker, do research quicker, and ask natural language questions to pull up NSF policies or whatever it is. If you ask me, I'll tell you, it's a big research project, right? We don't actually know what's going to come of it or how it's going to be used, right? I couldn't have imagined when I started my career in '94 that my mother would be using her phone to go to the order on Starbucks and go in and pick it up and leave, and I would get charged for it. Couldn't have imagined that, right? I would have never even in my wildest dream imagined that. So I think ChatGPT is the same thing. We don't know how this is going to play out, but if you're a credit, you need to be allocating some of your budget that you spend 30 grand a year to send a team of people to the California Credit Union League conference, right? Now, wouldn't it be better to spend some of that to actually your team about ChatGPT and how to use it and develop something out of it, right? Rather than go stand at the same conference doing the same thing you did in 1998, right? Like I don't understand that use of resources. And I don't understand people that do the same thing every year, year after year, and expect a different result. You got to try something new.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I think your point is really well taken with, because, the staff is not the end of this, right? I can tell you that soon you'll be getting correspondence from members that was written by ChatGPT. Some of it will be legal based. Scott just pointed out that, and you may get, a cease and desist from a member, about a loan you just made or something. There's just like I said, the staff is just, and by the way, internet played out the same way. It started with the staff. Then the members demanded home banking or a website for the members and what we would put on it. We were afraid to put our addresses on it. They'll find us and rob us. They already know our addresses. They found it already. It was in the yellow pages. They could use that to rob us. But these were the actual legitimate discussions that were had. And so, and maybe needed to be had, most likely. So it's just interesting. I want to jump over to Sarah. So I see Sarah Cook's on here. Sarah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. A long time no talk. I love your little story here. So you hired a writer.
Yeah.
And this writer, so now we know you don't write anything. That's good. So you're not someone that's writing your stuff for you. Smart. That's what I do. And this writer outsourced to ChatGPT, or at least was using it. And you were able to call he or she on it. But tell me, and part of me goes, well, so, I mean, if you prompt it right, the writing, go ahead, tell me.
And that's the thing. And that's kind of the nuance to what I put in the chat is it was an intern. So he's 20 and he does not have the foundation of the basic creative writing skills to be able to prompt it with the right questions.
Okay.
So when I read it, it's very like the first blog looked like the second blog. I mean, it was quite obvious. Plus looking at, before he started with me, he had given me some writing samples. So they were very different. They were more.
You suddenly improved.
I know. Wow, your grammar is perfect. It's boring, but it's perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the thing for me, again, I don't care if he knows, if he uses ChatGPT, if he knows how to use it. But that's the thing, he needs at his level, the foundation to be able to ask the right questions. Like I was talking with a friend of mine who is no longer NPR, but has that background. And she was saying she put together what would be an $80,000 PR marketing plan with ChatGPT in 8 hours on her own. Which is really scary.
Yeah. That's $10,000 an hour. I think I'll take that job. That's better. That's better than my me in Australia's YouTube influencer plan. But I want to point something you said is interesting. Is okay, so you're a writer. I wrote a book. I don't. I've written some articles, but I don't know if you found out. But when ChatGPT first came out, I said, at some point I went, hey, are you aware of breaking? And it went, yeah, of course I'm aware. My book's called Breaking Digital Gridlock. It's back there on the wall if you want to look. But, so anyways, I started asking it some pretty poignant questions regarding some of the stuff in the chapters. And what it was given back to me very clearly made me know this thing had read my book, period. Mm-hmm. Just read it inside and out. It knew. Did you, and let me just end that sentence and I'll ask you. So one of the prompt engineering things we figured out was if you want to write like John Best, then you just go in your prompt, write that. Now you get where you want it and you go, now rewrite that as though you're John Best, the author of Breaking Digital Gridlock. And holy crap, it's like, whoa, I guess like, I said the staff does a great job. Well, they're like, a max headroom in this ChatGPT thing away from needing me ever, right? They're going to have that. Have you discovered that same thing with regard to your stuff?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never asked it to write like me, but it's interesting. And I stole this from somebody else. But if I'm stuck for a headline or something, I will ask, and then the client has the right personality. I will ask it to write a headline for this blog and put the whole blog in there in the style of Taylor Swift or in the style of BuzzFeed to try to just generate something a little more creative. So sort of along the lines of what you're talking about. Yeah. And it does a decent job. I didn't think it was great, but it was decent.
Well, and so they're being sued like by Sarah Silverman for that sort of thing. But what's interesting is, and this goes back to what Chris was saying. So if the staff because here's the thing, and I think Australia hit the nail on the head, and that's what everybody's here for. That's why we have a large group here, is because everybody understands that in order to grow their business, they're going to need to grow their business, actually triple their business without even doubling the staff. And I attribute that quote to Alan from True West. I heard it at his board meeting and it's stuck with me ever since. And it is exactly what every credit union's mission should be at this point, because without it, you're going to be margined out, right? Particularly if other organizations have figured out how to harness this AI technology. And so that comes back to the prompt engineering. So, it could be that, okay, you're allowed to use this, but only if you use this prompt, right? I think that's one thing. I think another thing that's really important is going to be that this decentralized AI where everything has an AI built into it, which is what's happening right now. Every product, every tool suddenly is getting AI. Here's somebody asked to write a paragraph like John Best. You got to say John Best, the author of Breaking Digital Gridlock.
Oh, I did.
I didn't see it in the. Okay.
The poem was too long to post in our chat, but I'm happy to share that with anybody.
But look, it brought up my name of my book and all kinds of stuff. But to your point, the prompt engineering is going to be important because it really does react to the prompt. It really is very, very, very reactive to the prompt, and depending on the prompt that you give it. But I guess the other thing is what happens when this becomes GPT-5 here in a few short months? And it's now, remember, GPT-3 could barely pass. It could pass the bar, but just barely. It couldn't pass any medical, whatever they are. I don't know what you have to take to become a doctor, but it couldn't do that. It definitely was a little less coherent and more likely to hallucinate. GPT-4 took a huge jump. Not only did it pass the bar, but it passed it in the 99th percentile or something. Like really, it basically aced the bar. It aced all the medical stuff. And so if we continue this track, this rise that we're seeing, GPT-5 would be on track to be smarter than humans. It's already smarter than us in terms of the breadth of information that it knows. But in terms of like even being more, say, it understands press, releases and press material and press writing better than this, Scott Mills, because somewhere Scott wrote 10 blogs and now this thing's absorbed all this. So the question is as we go and build out, and I'm going to throw the last one at you, which is going to freak everybody out here in a minute, which is the staff. But as we go and build out these policies, I think we need to be careful, one, to not kill the innovative side of it so that people feel constrained. And I like some of what Andy Kemp said with regard to that, that, hey, we're going to have an acceptable use policy. I think that was good. I think that because when GPT-5 comes out, it's going to be such a big jump. And not only that, but you're going to see it with Microsoft. You're going to see it with a lot of other players, that if you don't use it, you will likely be at a business disadvantage with your competitors. and if your staff's not using it. That's, I guess, where I'm going.
And going one step further, John, is, as I used ChatGPT, I got better at it and I kept getting better at it. My prompts get better. And if you wait to start, you're starting at ground zero.
Hmm.
And you have all this time that you weren't learning how to use the product, and you're way behind.
That's a great point, Elliot. So I guess if we're going to give them acceptable uses, then we should give them training.
Yeah.
That's another good point. Like if you're going to let them use it at all, perhaps training would be really important. All right. So I'm going to drop my last bit of, oh God, John said this knowledge on you, but I've been saying this. I'm going to say it again. We are 6 months or less away from me having a real deal, the dream, Jarvis-based Iron Man personal assistant. And let me explain. What's going to happen is you're going to be able to go into, whoever harnesses this, let's call it Microsoft, and Microsoft creates, your, virtual you or whatever we call it. And I could get up in the morning and I could give my virtual self some tasks. And my virtual self task might be, one of them might be, I want you to call and get the 10-day payoff on my car from Ent Credit Union or from the credit union that I am using. And so, and with voice cloning software, and let's say that on top of that, like Sarah, there's a lot of writing for me. You can see my great poem there, which that's exactly what I would have wrote 100%. I'll put it to music later, but, and it'll sound like me. It'll have the ability to make a phone call. It'll know my account number. It'll know my last deposits because it'll have access to my account. It'll have all these things. And that thing is going to pick up a phone and call the credit union and sound to a call center representative like me. And it's going to get right through all of the MFA because it knows my support password or my secret password. I'll get through the damn phone prompts, right? It'll know all of those things and it will ask for the 10-day payoff, and then it will follow up and maybe go call the car dealership or Carvana or whatever. And these are the types of tasks we're going to be able to get it. And I think that the other thing we haven't talked about here is going to be regulation and what that looks like, which there's already some of that going on with regard to Congress. But how will you deal with that as an organization? And here's the question. As credit unions, we can go one of two ways, right? We can embrace it and be ready and have a policy and say, you know what? We already have people who have accountants that call in and they've been granted access to the account either via joint or via something like that. And they can have certain things they can do. And here is the, the tiered rights for these particular users. And they can do this, they can do that, but they can't do this. But the thing is this thing could impersonate me at a level that, maybe could defeat all those things. So this is back to that transparency. So I guess what I'm saying is I foresee a future where members are going to be using this and they're going to be their version of this AI, this self-service concept is going to be interacting with your credit union. And that to me is probably the bigger change because it opens up the door to the thing that we've always wanted, which is this account transfer type thing. When we first get a member in and we really want them to move over their savings and all this, and we give them these forms, which never work. There's been a number of names for Switch Kit as one I've heard, but I do think that this is a future we're headed towards. But I do think I think the best start right now is transparency. I think it's an acceptable use policy right off the bat. And then also I would engage in some firewall information to make sure that take a look at the usage of it, take a look at, I would add some rules in web content filters, those sorts of things to get a little more detail about Bard, Bing, ChatGPT. And now there are more and more. But yeah, and
John.
Go ahead. Sorry.
John, shouldn't everybody read pages 53 through 70 of Breaking Digital Gridlock when formulating a strategy?
You mean like ChatGPT did? You don't need to read it. You can just ask ChatGPT about pages 53 through 70. I'm pretty sure it could just print them for you.
Yeah, John,
but-
we did that. We fed Kirk's books, the CU
Uh-huh.
2.0 book and the financial, the AI book. We fed them both into a collection in a large language model. And now whenever you see content come out from CU 2.0, we tell it to write it in the style of Kirk Drake. And when we put automated content, you'd have no idea that it's whether it's Kirk or not.
So true. So
Yep.
true. Yeah, and you know, if Kirk's book had been better, ChatGPT would have read it. But you know, you could just tell him it said that.
I will.
If it had been published by Wiley, maybe he would have had maybe he wouldn't have to go and feed it, you know, force it down some poor AI's throat. Maybe it would have
Yeah.
wanted to read it like it read mine. You tell him I
Instead
said
of book in a box.
yeah, no, it's true. It's true. And you know, the next town hall we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about decentralized and centralized AI. And so we're going to talk about how we deal with that. And I will let everybody that's on this list know about our upcoming Filene publication, which includes a lot of details around this and even more detail around top 5 things you really should think about. And I would love to keep the discussion going. Please just go to that AI site. And if you fill out the AI site, we're definitely going to reach out if you'd like to have a further discussion. One of the things we do in the Innovation Club is work on policies like this for all the credits that are part of the Innovation Club so that we can share them. And that's one we're involved in right now. So, all right, well, it is 3:00 here. Chris, as always, Chris, I asked you and Kirk to give us a hand with the AI stuff. If you guys don't mind, you know, pushing that out for us, I'll send you another side note, but I sent Kirk one in a couple different places, but I think he just ignores me. So
We'll do. I'll
yeah.
ask him about it. We got
He's
a call in 30 minutes.
just like ChatGPT ignores his books. I'm a co-author of one, so I guess I shouldn't say that. All right,
Exactly.
well, thank you. And Kirk is a really good writer. For those of you that don't know, you actually should be reading his stuff. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a great day. And if you want to have further discussion, I'm happy to talk. So just give us a buzz.